All right, let's get right into it. If you really want to understand life, what we are, you have to think small, like way smaller. We have to look at the actual molecules that build us from the ground up. Because when you get down to it, life is really just a story told in the language of chemistry. And hey, that's not just me being poetic. Even NASA has a working definition for life. And just look at those words: a self-sustained chemical system. See? Before you can even get to the biology, before evolution can do its thing, it all starts with chemistry. That's the engine driving literally everything. And that question, right there, that's one of the biggest questions in all of science. It's one thing to have a bunch of chemicals sloshing around, but it is a whole other thing for that chemical soup to suddenly spark into something that can eat and grow and make copies of itself. So how on earth did that happen? Okay, so to even start to wrap our heads around that giant question, we have to zoom way in. We need to figure out what living even means when all you've got is a collection of molecules. What's really cool is that this whole way of thinking was a huge shift thanks to people like Alexander Oparin. He was one of the first to say, hey, what if the origin of life isn't some big mystery, but something we can explain with the basic, predictable chemistry of carbon molecules here on early Earth? That changed everything. So as scientists started piecing this puzzle together, they figured out that for life to get going, you really need two basic things. First, you need a replicator. That's some kind of molecule that can make copies of itself to pass down the blueprints. And second, you need a compartment. Think of it like a little bubble or a bag to keep all that important chemistry together and safe from the outside world. So a replicator and a compartment, a blueprint and a workshop. This leads to the ultimate chicken and the egg question: which one came first? And this is where we get two major camps, two big ideas about how this great chemical beginning actually went down. Okay, so you've got two competing theories. On one side, you have the replicator hypothesis. This is the idea that a single special molecule, probably something like RNA, just happened to form. Now, why RNA? Because it's a jack of all trades. It can store information like DNA, but it can also act like an enzyme to get chemical reactions going. It's the perfect starter molecule. That's the information first model. Then you have the metabolism hypothesis, which argues that the compartment came first, little contained networks of reactions that just got more and more complex until eventually they spat out a replicator. That's the factory first model. But here's the really beautiful part. It almost doesn't matter which one came first, whether you start with a replicator or you start with the metabolism. Both roads lead to the same destination, this thing called a protocell. It's basically the first rough draft of a cell with all the essential parts: a replicator for the blueprints, a metabolism to do the work, and a membrane holding it all together. So you start with that simple little protocell, and you fast forward a few billion years, and you get this. Yeah, this is a modern metabolic map. It looks like a city's subway system got into a fight with a plate of spaghetti, right? It is an absolutely vast, dizzyingly complex network of chemical reactions happening inside our cells every single moment. And this is the part that just blows my mind. If you break all of that incredible complexity down, what is it made of? Four main things. Over 99% of all the atoms in a living cell are just hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. That's it. Life built this entire magnificent cathedral of complexity from just a handful of simple chemical bricks. So life is built from these simple molecular parts. But what happens when you find something that uses those exact same parts? Proteins, a genetic code, but it doesn't seem to be, alive. This brings us to the ultimate gray area of biology: viruses. Let's talk about viruses for a second, because they're a perfect case study for this molecular view of life. The best way to think about a virus isn't as a little creature, but as an incredible, sophisticated molecular machine. It has all the parts of life, the proteins, the genetic material, but it's missing one absolutely crucial component we talked about: a metabolism. It has no engine of its own. And because viruses have no engine, they can't do anything by themselves. They can't make copies, they can't evolve. They are completely inert until they can hijack the machinery of a living cell. This is why they live in that weird space between life and non-life. They're not truly alive, but they're not just random chemicals either. They're the ultimate molecular parasites. Now, this deep dive into life's molecular machinery isn't just a fun science lesson. It's actually a toolkit. It's a toolkit that lets us intervene to actually fix things when that intricate machinery inside us breaks down. This right here is the whole basis of modern medicine. Once we understand the specific molecules and pathways that are going wrong in a disease, we can start to think like engineers. We can design our own custom molecules. We call them drugs that can go in and interact with that machinery to fix the problem. The whole process is kind of like being a molecular locksmith. Step 1, you have to find the exact lock that's broken. That's your molecular target. Step 2, you have to design the perfect key, a drug molecule with the precise shape to fit into that lock. And step 3, you have to test that key to make sure it only opens the one lock you want it to, without messing up any others. It's all about precise, targeted molecular intervention. And this image, this really sums up the entire goal of biochemistry. It's not about just memorizing a list of molecules and pathways. It's about taking all those scattered individual pieces of data and connecting the dots, building a coherent network of understanding. It's about turning a flood of information into real, actionable knowledge. So let's bring this all the way back around and make this personal, because this isn't just a story about some cells in a petri dish. This is the story of you. Remember this number? That staggering, beautiful complexity inside of you right now is built from the exact same simple toolkit: hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. You are a direct, unbroken continuation of a chemical story that started billions of years ago in the oceans of a young Earth. So, I want to leave you with this thought. We've seen that life is basically a self-sustaining chemical system. We've seen that our own bodies are run by these incredible, intricate molecular machines. So if we are, at our very core, the result of a multi-billion-year-old chemical story, what does that make us? It's a pretty deep question, and the answer begins right here with the molecules of life.